I graduated from the Foster School of Business with a double major in accounting and information systems with a minor in sales, and it took me 4 tries to get in this major. I applied quarter after quarter. I just had nothing to show for it except we regret to inform you that you will not be accepted into the Foster School of Business this quarter, and it defeated me. I just remember being so down on myself because as a college kid, grades at the end of the day are just like what gets you the job, and you can't, like, what's the point in GPA if you don't have a major? And so for 3 years in college, I did not have a major, and this stressed me out. And so these are the lessons I learned. And this whole process taught me that society is really meant for those who figure out what they want to do very early on in life. It seems like a lot of like the older generation, like you could figure things out in college. This whole application process of, you gotta get in a competitive major, you gotta have like a 39 cumulative, you gotta know what you want to do in your second year of high school. This is a relatively new concept, but also in the Bay Area, I've learned that competitive preschools are a thing. The Foster School Business was a good introduction. I'm like, wow, people just like place so much emphasis on just money, power, and getting into a good school. And it's like, for me, it's like, I just want to be happy. I want to have fun with my friends. I want to go have fun with my families. I want to make a good enough amount of money to just go do all these things. I had a 3.53 cumulative GPA, a 3.83 prerequisite GPA, and a 4.25 out of 6 WSA score. And this may seem impressive on paper, but for anyone who's applied to the school, anyone who's seen the average applicant, I have it on the screen, it's actually pretty low. And so when I got in, I was thinking like, dang, I just barely scraped by. And my cumulative GPA, it was low because I wanted to be pre-medicine going to college. I came into college thinking, college is the time to find yourself. College is the time to learn what you like and what you don't like in life. And so I did pre-med originally. I got a 2.3 in one of my classes. I didn't do the best in the other classes. So when I figured like, medicine's not gonna work out, let's do what every Greek life kid does and pivot to business. Throughout the entire application process, I remember being so mad at life and just everything in general because it felt like the application process for this school was like, hey, you need to know what you want to do coming out of high school. We don't have time for the, like, looking into yourself type aspect. You gotta know what you want to do, apply to your major, get in direct admit. Because I joined the University of Washington, and I found there's such thing as a direct admit program where you don't have to. You can skip the whole application process and just focus entirely on education. And I thought to myself, that sounds super nice, but as someone who was in Greek life back in college, I would not have made a good point of the freshman direct admit program. I was very much the type, it's like, I liked hanging out with my friends, I liked just not studying, and I think maybe the Foster School Business was actually in the right for not letting me in immediately because I just didn't have a good head on my shoulders. I remember thinking to myself like, let's just skip class and go to the gym. Let's go skip class and go to the party tonight. It was just a whole lot of like, not the best priorities. And so I was not a good fit for the school. Now that the dust has settled 4 years later after graduating from college, I can attest that I learned more from applying to the college than I learned actually being in the college, because I think I did apply to a certain extent because I just wanted to get in this, despite those turning me down. Because after my second attempt, I did appeal to get into the school I consider that my third attempt, and I remember vividly the email rejection was like, we have looked closely at the application, we determined nothing that would change our mind. And I remember taking that personally. I remember my friend Katie telling me, she's like, Vicky's not actually that bad, she's like a very nice woman. I'm like, Katie, you shut your mouth. This woman's trying to deny my future. This woman could go pound sand. And so I applied that 4th time as kind of like a, let me in, guys, let me in. And you may be thinking to yourself, isn't it a holistic application? There's the essay section, which, yes, it technically is a holistic application, but back in 2019 when I got in, I remember the counselors telling me that, yes, it was holistic, but they have an equation that determines who gets in and who doesn't get in. They determine the average applicant, and they put everyone's like stats on one graph or something, and anyone on a certain point gets let in automatically. And so if you fell like maybe just short of the line, then they look at your application, in which case they factor in the essay portion, which is more like hardships, like what do you bring to the table, accomplishments, which, I think I remember being very, very salty during my application process about this, but it's a good lesson, and just because like the world is unfair doesn't mean that you're not special. And so when you're applying, you have to keep that in mind. After every rejection, I had to go back to the drawing board and think to myself, like, what can I do better for next time? Was it maybe get a higher GPA by taking easier classes? Is it maybe retaking a prerequisite GPA class? Because I took accounting 215 back at University of Washington, got exactly average, and so I retook that class at the University of Washington Bothell and got like a 4.0 in that class. So that massively bumped up my prerequisite GPA. And so, or maybe even just joining a club and maybe talk about that in my application process. process, or just showing an interest in my professional development, where I would go to extracurricular events like Beta Alpha Psi, meet the firms, or just like any event where I could meet professionals in the field that I had an interest in, like auditing. I went to meet the firms, met a lot of auditors, which eventually led me to getting a summer internship, which ironically I didn't even need to be in the accounting major to get that internship, which is I pat myself on the back there, because it was really tough going to these Foster School business events as an undecided major and telling the recruiters like, yeah, you see all these like Foster School business kids, I know they like are pretty smart, but you should hire me, the not decided major kid. I just have a very strong interest. Please take my application. I need a job. I later learned I just couldn't really relate to those in the major, because they all seem very extremely career driven. I remember thinking to myself like, dude, we're already in our major. Let's just chill out and have fun. Like, why do we care about GPA? They're not gonna fail us. And oh boy, that was another thing. I played a constant game of chicken with the teachers they would never fail me. So like the average in all these classes was 3.4, and I was like, solid, let's shoot for average. And overall, this process taught me that you just need to place constant bets to yourself over and over again. People outside look in and we're like, dude, why are you applying to Foster School business again? You got rejected 3 times. Why are you doing this again? And I'm like, no, one more game. And it's like, I just had such faith in myself. I just call it delusions, because the GPA I had was not that good. And my story was not actually that unique, but I just had so much blind faith in myself that things were going to work out, that when I finally got in, it was like, amazing. But in my mind I was thinking like, yes, it finally happened. I knew this was gonna happen. I knew it. There was never a doubt in my mind. Spoiler alert, there was a lot of doubt, but it's like I go through days like lots of doubt, and then days of like, I'm gonna be a god. If I could instill wisdom onto anyone who is going through a similar process of applying to a competitive major, like if you're not getting into your major, it's not bad to just cut your losses and maybe focus your efforts on something else, because I eventually got in to be an accountant / information systems major, but you could argue that I could have spent that time doing something else. Like maybe I should have, like, instead of applying to the major repeatedly, I could have just applied to other jobs, or like applied to internships, or just develop myself as a person where I learned more about Excel, Python, or just like learning social media. There is just a whole lot of stuff that, like, if I just, maybe rejection wasn't a bad thing necessarily, but I mean, I got it eventually, so this is all kind of like hindsight stuff. And most importantly, you are enough. Do not let the university, do not let anyone tell you that you're not good enough, because it sucked having someone who, like, someone who's like double my age, some old hag in the admissions office tell me like, I'm not good enough, where it's like, okay, Vicky, get off your high horse. Okay, we're gonna have some problems, Vicky. And so, do not let anyone determine your worth.